They called her just a maid. But when a secret buried in the heart of a billionaire empire came to light, she became the storm that brought it all crashing down. This isn't just a story about money or power. It's about love twisted by betrayal, and the maid who refused to stay silent. You're watching the Billionaires Enclave, and if you're ready for a tale where loyalty has a price, hit subscribe and share this story before the truth vanishes into the dark. They say every empire has a secret that could bring it crashing down. For the Sterlings, it all began with a maid who dared to feel something she shouldn't.
My name is Lena Morales, and I never imagined my life would become the spark that burned down a billion-dollar dynasty. When I first walked into the Sterling mansion, I was just another invisible worker in a black uniform, polishing marble floors that weren't mine, setting tables for people who didn't know my name. But I noticed things. The silence after the death of Victor Sterling, the billionaire patriarch. The way his widow, Eleanor Sterling, floated through the halls dressed in black silk and secrets. And then there was Adrian Sterling, their son. There. The man I was never supposed to even look at. He wasn't like the rest. He didn't bark orders or ignore me. He'd leave small things behind, a glass half full, a book open, and sometimes when he thought no one was watching, he'd stare at the old family portrait, jaw tight, eyes full of grief. One night everything changed. It was raining, the kind of storm that makes the world feel smaller. I was cleaning the study when I heard the door open. Adrian stepped in, dripping wet. His eyes red from something deeper than rain. "Did you ever love him?" he muttered under his breath. Froze. "Sir." He looked at me not as a maid, but as a person. My father. Everyone loved his money, his power. But I wonder if anyone ever loved him. Something in his voice cracked, and I forgot my place. I said softly, "Maybe he just hid his heart in the wrong places." For a moment, the distance between us disappeared. I saw the pain behind his perfection. And for a man who had everything, that connection was a forbidden luxury. But in the Sterling mansion, affection is a crime. Eleanor saw the way Adrian started looking at me. She didn't say it, but her eyes did. Cold, sharp, measuring me like dirt under diamonds. Then came the whisper from Marisol Vega, my only friend in that place. "Girl, be careful," she warned in the laundry room. "You're playing with lions, and lions don't apologize when they bite." I tried to stop it. I tried to pull away. But Adrian found excuses to see me, to ask about my life, to laugh, to breathe for a moment in a house suffocating with greed. Until one night, he handed me something that would change everything. An old leather envelope, sealed with his father's insignia. "He left this for someone, but not my mother," Adrian whispered. "I think it's meant for you." My heart stopped. For me. Before I could answer, Eleanor appeared behind him. Her voice, low, venomous, sliced the air. "Adrian, step away from the help." He turned. "Mother, you don't understand." "I understand perfectly," she snapped. "You're about to make the same mistake your father did." The room fell silent. Chill ran through me. And that's when I realized. This wasn't about love anymore. It was about history repeating itself. Later that night, I stood in the empty kitchen, that sealed envelope still trembling in my hands. What could possibly be inside? A secret will? Evidence of betrayal? Or maybe the reason Victor Sterling died? Marisol's voice echoed in my head. "Don't open it, Lena. Whatever's in there, it's not meant for you." But deep down I already knew. I wasn't just cleaning up their mess anymore. I was about to become their mess. And once I opened that envelope, there'd be no turning back. Because in the world of billionaires, the smallest truth can kill. And the lowest servant can rise higher than the richest heir. So tell me, if you found a secret that could destroy an empire, would you open it? What would you do if you were in Lena's place? Open the envelope or walk away? Tell me in the comments below. And if you're just joining us, make sure to subscribe to the Billionaires Enclave so you don't miss the next twist in the Maid Who Brought Down a Billionaire Empire. The rain hadn't stopped. It was still whispering against the windows of the Sterling mansion when I stood there, staring at that envelope. The one with the gold seal. The one Victor Sterling himself had marked with his name before he died. I knew opening it could change everything. But what I didn't know was, it would also destroy everything I thought I understood. I sat alone in the dimly lit kitchen, the house silent except for the ticking clock and the faint hum of wealth, refrigerators that never ran empty, lights that never went out. This house had everything, except truth. My fingers trembled as I peeled the seal open. Inside were 2 letters. One addressed to Eleanor Sterling, the other to Lena Morales. My breath caught. The billionaire had written me a letter. I unfolded it. His handwriting was sharp but weary. If you are reading this, Lena, it means I've already paid the price for the sins I couldn't undo. You were never meant to live the life you were given, because it should have been mine to protect. Inside this envelope, you'll find the key to everything the Sterlings have hidden, and the proof that my death was no accident. Froze. My pulse thundered. His death. Not an accident. Inside, there was also a small brass key, old and engraved with his initials, VS. That's when Marisol walked in, still in her night shift uniform. Her voice cracked when she saw my face. Lena, what happened? I handed her the letter. Her eyes widened. Girl, this is crazy. You can't tell anyone you have this. But I already knew it was too late. Because at that very moment, upstairs, Eleanor Sterling was on a call, her voice slicing through the quiet halls. No, Daniel. She has it. The girl. Find out how much she knows. And if she talks, make sure she doesn't. Daniel Cross, the family's longtime advisor and so-called friend, was her shadow in every scandal. And now he was being sent for me. Hours later, I slipped into the old study, where Adrian Sterling had first given me that envelope. The storm had finally died down, but the tension inside me hadn't. He was there, leaning against his father's desk, his eyes dark with guilt. You opened it, didn't you? He asked quietly. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. He could see it on my face. What does it say, Lena? It says your father didn't die naturally. The words hung in the air like smoke. He looked away, fists clenching. I always knew something was wrong. The night he died, my mother called Dr. Pierce before she called me. She said it was a heart attack, but I saw bruises. A tremor ran down my spine. And you didn't say anything. What could I say? She's my mother. His voice broke. And for a moment, I saw the boy trapped behind the billionaire's mask. Loyal, confused, and afraid of the truth. Before I could speak again, the study door creaked open. Daniel Cross stood there, his expression perfectly calm. Quite the conversation you're having, he said smoothly. Mr. Sterling, you should know better than to discuss family matters with the help. Adrian stepped forward. Daniel, enough. Daniel's eyes darted to me. Polite smile, dangerous calm. I think Miss Morales should leave. Right now. The air went still. His tone wasn't a suggestion. It was a warning. But before he could move closer, Detective Miles Carver appeared behind him, that same gruff investigator who had been poking around since Victor's funeral. Actually, Carver said, flashing his badge, she's not going anywhere. Daniel's smile vanished. Carver looked at me. Miss Morales, I think we need to talk. Privately. What did you find? In that moment, I realized I was no longer a maid in this mansion. I was a key witness. Maybe even the only one who could uncover what happened. But as Carver led me down the corridor, I saw Eleanor at the top of the grand staircase. Watching. Silent. Her gaze sharp as broken glass. And for the first time I understood what the letter truly meant. Victor Sterling didn't just leave me a secret. He left me a target on my back. So I ask you, if you found a secret that proved your boss was murdered, and the killers were in the same house, would you hide it or would you risk your life to expose it? If you were Lena, would you turn the letter over to the police, or keep the secret to protect yourself? Let me know in the comments below. If you're enjoying this story, make sure you hit subscribe to the Billionaires Enclave, because the deeper we go, the darker these secrets get. When dawn broke over the Sterling estate, the sun didn't rise in warmth, it rose in war. And Eleanor Sterling was the kind of woman who never lost a war. I knew something was wrong the moment the mansion's air shifted. The staff whispering, the guards moving differently, the tension humming through the marble halls like electricity. Victor's death had left a vacuum, and Eleanor had just decided to fill it, by any means necessary. Started with Adrian. He called me early that morning, his voice tight. "Lena, don't come to the house today." "Why?" "Yes. Because my mother knows. She knows you have the letter." My blood ran cold. Hours later the news broke. A viral headline from gossip site The Sterling Scene, run by none other than Evelyn Shaw. Sterling heiress accuses former maid of theft and blackmail. There it was. My name, plastered across the screen in flashing red. My picture beside a fabricated story about betrayal, extortion, and lies. Eleanor hadn't just come after me quietly. She wanted to ruin me publicly. And she'd chosen Evelyn Shaw, her personal viper in silk, to do it. By noon, reporters were already outside my apartment building, their voices cutting through the air like knives. "Lena Morales, did you steal from the Sterling family? Is it true you seduced Victor Sterling before his death?" I slammed the window shut, my hands trembling. Marisol was pacing beside me, her anger boiling. "This woman's insane, Lena. You need to fight back." "But how?" "She owned everything, the mansion, the company, the media. I was just a maid who had once dusted her chandeliers." Then my phone buzzed again. "Adrian, meet me." The old lake house, my father's retreat. "Don't tell anyone." The drive there was long, silent, and wet, the kind of drive where you start counting your mistakes in the rearview mirror. When I arrived, Adrian looked worse than I'd ever seen him. Disheveled, broken. He handed me a folder. Inside were bank statements, offshore accounts, and private correspondence between Eleanor and Daniel Cross. My heart stuttered. This proves they were moving money before Victor died. He nodded. "And that's not all. Dr. Pierce just called me. He said my father's autopsy results were altered. She paid him to change the report." The pieces started falling into place. Eleanor hadn't just manipulated Victor's empire, she'd orchestrated his end. Before I could process it, Adrian's phone rang again. He glanced at the caller ID, his mother. He let it ring. But then a text came through. For words that turned the blood in my veins to ice. "You should have stayed loyal." And then a gunshot. Not from the phone. From outside. We hit the floor as the window shattered. Bullets tore through the lake house walls. I crawled toward the fireplace, yanking Adrian down with me. The shots stopped as quickly as they started. Silence. Then footsteps. Low. Deliberate. Crunching on wet gravel. Adrian peeked through the blinds and froze. "It's Daniel." He was standing outside, calm, holding an umbrella and a pistol. His suit didn't even have a wrinkle. He looked like a man handling unfinished business. He called out, voice steady. "You can't run from her, Lena. Eleanor doesn't lose. Hand over the letter, and maybe you'll live long enough to regret it." Adrian shouted back. "You work for her?" Daniel smiled faintly. "I work for the Empire, Adrian. Your father forgot that. Don't make the same mistake." He fired once more. Not at us but at the tires of Adrian's car. Then he turned and walked away, leaving us trapped. I sat there, shaking, glass in my hair, the air thick with gunpowder and disbelief. Adrian leaned against the wall, his hand bleeding from a cut. "My mother's done it. She's declared war." Or, that's what this was now. Not a scandal. Not revenge. A battle for control of everything Victor Sterling built and destroyed. I looked at the letter in my hands. Victor's words echoed again. The proof that my death was no accident. Maybe it was time to stop hiding. Maybe it was time to fight back. As I stood, Marisol's voice replayed in my head. "You can't let them write your story, Lena. You have to write it yourself." So I took the brass key from my pocket and stared at the tiny initials engraved on it. If Eleanor Sterling wanted a war, she just got one. Music swells. Firelight flickers against shattered glass. But the question is, how do you fight a woman who owns the world? If you were Lena, would you go to the police, or take Eleanor down from the inside? Tell me what you'd do in the comments. You're watching the Billionaires Enclave, where every secret has a price. Hit that subscribe button and stay tuned. Because Eleanor's next move will shock you. There's something about silence after chaos. It's too calm, too perfect. That was the silence inside the old lake house the night after Eleanor's attack. Adrian sat by the fire, staring into the flames as if they could answer him. His shirt was still stained with blood, not from a gunshot, but from the wound of betrayal. And me. I couldn't stop thinking about the letter Victor Sterling left behind, and the single brass key attached to it. A key that didn't fit any door in the mansion. The truth is buried where the empire was built. That's what Victor's note had said. So that night, while Adrian finally slept, I opened my laptop and dug through the digital archives of Sterling Global Holdings, the company that had built its fortune on oil, real estate, and silence. Then I saw it. A file buried deep inside a restricted folder. Project Atlas, confidential. When I clicked it open, the screen filled with blueprints, maps, secret offshore accounts and names. Powerful names. Politicians, bankers, and CEOs. All connected to Eleanor Sterling's empire of shadows. But the most chilling part wasn't the money. It was a single photo, taken decades ago. Victor Sterling, younger, standing beside a child. Little girl. The caption read, Orphanage Outreach Program, 1998. The girl's name, Lena Morales. My breath caught. I leaned closer, heart pounding. That was me. He'd known me long before I ever worked in his house. Why? Before I could think further, Adrian stirred awake. Lena, he murmured, his voice rough. You should rest. But there was no rest now. I turned the screen toward him. Look. He frowned at the file. His eyes widened. My father, he knew you. Yes. Long before I became his maid. I swallowed hard. He put me there for a reason. Adrian's face hardened. Then this isn't about inheritance. It's about guilt. Before we could go deeper, headlights cut through the window. Car stopped outside. Marisol rushed in, rain-soaked and breathless. They know where you are. Behind her, a tall figure stepped in. Detective Miles Carver. His trench coat was dripping, his eyes sharp and tired. I told you both to stay out of this. Adrian bristled. You're supposed to be investigating my father's death. I am, Carver replied, lighting a cigarette. But when billionaires start killing each other, the truth gets buried with the bodies. He flicked ash onto the floor and nodded toward the screen. Project Atlas. Where did you find that? In the Sterling archives, I said. Carver let out a low whistle. That's not a business project. It's a cover-up. Your late boss built an entire system of offshore fronts to buy silence. Doctors, lawyers, politicians. He looked at me. Including the man who altered his death certificate. Dr. Samuel Pierce. The same doctor who delivered Victor's death notice to the press. And signed off the autopsy. Adrian clenched his jaw. You're saying my father was murdered to protect this? Carver nodded. And if you're not careful, you'll be next. Before he left, he slipped a folded piece of paper into my hand. This is the address where Project Atlas began, he whispered. Follow it, and you'll find the first lie. The address led us to an abandoned corporate warehouse near the docks, once owned by Sterling Global. We drove there before dawn. The rain had stopped, but the fog clung to the city like secrets that refused to die. Inside the warehouse, the air smelled of dust, old money, and forgotten sins. Stacks of boxes, files, ledgers, all stamped with the Sterling crest. And hidden behind a false wall. A safe. The brass key fit perfectly. Inside was a single envelope labeled, "In the event of my death." I opened it slowly, hands trembling. Inside were handwritten letters, hundreds of them, all addressed to people I didn't know. But one name stopped me cold. To my son, Adrian. He took it from me, eyes scanning the words. His voice cracked as he read aloud. "If you're reading this, son, then your mother has already done what I feared she would. But know this, the empire you inherit was built on blood, and one day, someone innocent will pay for it." Tears welled in his eyes. He knew. And beneath the letter, a photograph of Eleanor and Daniel crossed together at a private island, dated just weeks before Victor's death. My voice trembled. They were working together even before he died. Adrian's hand shook. He trusted Daniel. He raised him like family. I looked at him, my mind racing. Then Daniel's the one who helped her pull it off. That's when the sound hit. The faint buzz of a phone hidden in the corner. Red light. We'd been recorded. I grabbed Adrian's arm. "We have to go. Now." We bolted from the warehouse just as headlights flared outside again. Black SUVs pulling in from both ends. Eleanor's men. Adrian floored the engine. Tires screamed against wet asphalt. Through the rearview mirror, I saw the warehouse erupt in flames. Everything, the files, the proof, Victor's voice, turned to smoke. But not everything was lost. Before the fire spread, I'd taken one thing, a USB drive labeled Atlas Prime. Whatever was on it, Victor wanted someone pure to find it. Someone like me. Music swells. Camera closes on Lena's determined face, reflected in the window of the speeding car. For the first time, I wasn't just surviving their empire. I was dismantling it. If you uncovered proof of a billionaire's crimes, but it could destroy someone you love, would you expose it or hide it? Tell me in the comments. You're watching the Billionaires Enclave, where every empire hides a secret. Don't blink now, because Eleanor's next move will change everything. Hit that subscribe button before the next act drops. When power feels threatened, it doesn't retreat, strikes. And Eleanor Sterling had just begun to strike. The warehouse fire that destroyed Victor's secrets wasn't the end. It was her opening move. A message written in flame. For 2 nights, Adrian and I stayed hidden in a safe house above the old quarter. An apartment loaned by Marisol, my only constant in a life spinning out of control. But that night, as the city's hum softened into silence, something else woke inside me. First, but also clarity. Eleanor wasn't just protecting her fortune. She was hunting me, to erase Victor's last secret, and the woman who carried it. I'd been naive to think we could outsmart her from the shadows. When I told Adrian that, he just looked at me. His face a storm between anger and disbelief. "She won't stop, Lena. You don't know my mother." I held up the USB drive, the one I saved from the fire. "Then it's time she knows me." He stepped closer, voice low. "What's your plan?" "Simple," I said. "We expose her before she buries us." But plans never survive contact with the enemy. That morning, Evelyn Shaw, the venom-tongued gossip journalist, released a story that detonated across the internet like a grenade. Sterling heiress missing. Maid turned mistress to blame. My photo was everywhere. Headlines called me a thief, a fraud, a seductress. Marisol's phone buzzed nonstop. "Lena, this is bad. They're framing you for everything. Fraud, blackmail, even Victor's death." I felt my chest tighten. "Then we have to move before they make it official." Adrian was pacing. "This is my fault. I should have seen what she'd do. She's weaponized the media and the law." And he was right. Because within hours a warrant was out. Not for Eleanor, not for Sterling Global, but for me. Dr. Samuel Pierce, the family physician, had signed an affidavit claiming I poisoned Victor's medication. Lie. But one wrapped in enough money and power to make it look like truth. The widow's hunt had begun. We had to split up. Adrian went underground to reach his father's old lawyer, someone who might still be loyal to Victor. I stayed with Marisol, digging through the USB files for anything that could clear my name. The folder names read like a confession: Silent Fund, Orchid Line, Project Saint. Each one led to a hidden shell company tied to Eleanor's operations. And one name appeared again and again: Daniel Cross, Victor's supposed ally. The man who'd guided me after his death. But the deeper I looked, the more I realized something sickening. Daniel had been signing documents long after Victor's death, moving money through accounts meant for charity. It wasn't just betrayal. It was theft. And he was using Victor's death to feed Eleanor's empire. When Adrian returned, I showed him the evidence. He froze. Daniel was like a brother to my father. Then maybe your father died for trusting him. Before he could respond, the sound of glass shattering ripped through the air. Bullets tore through the windows. We dropped to the floor, Marisol screaming. Heard footsteps, voices shouting. Eleanor's men. Adrian grabbed my arm, dragging me toward the back stairs. We have to go. We burst into the alley, rain pelting our faces. The roar of the city drowned out our footsteps as we sprinted toward Adrian's car. Behind us, flames licked the safehouse walls. Another message from Eleanor. She wasn't trying to hide anymore. She wanted me to know she could reach me. Anywhere, anytime. That night, we hid in a motel off the edge of the city. Marisol was shaken but alive. Adrian sat across from me, his hands trembling as he held his father's letter. Lena, we can't win this, he said quietly. My mother controls the board, the press, the law. I interrupted him. Then we stopped playing by her rules. He looked at me, and in his eyes I saw it, the flicker of defiance Victor must have had before he died. What do you mean? He asked. The USB has something she doesn't want seen. Project Saint. He frowned. That's one of the offshore fronts. No, I whispered. It's a cover for her private lab, the one that produced the experimental drug that killed people in South America. The same one she buried with political payoffs. Adrian's face went pale. If that's true, then she's not just corrupt, I said. She's a murderer. A long silence followed. And then, for the first time, I saw Adrian's rage turn into resolve. He reached for my hand. Then we take her empire apart, piece by piece. But Eleanor was already one step ahead. Because across town, in a marble office overlooking the skyline, she watched a screen. Security footage. Us at the motel. She smiled coldly, wine glass in hand. Let them think they're safe, she whispered to Daniel Cross, standing beside her. He said nothing, only slid a folder toward her. Photos, bank slips, a burner phone. Eleanor's crimson lips curved. By the time the sun rises, Lena Morales will be a criminal on every continent. She lifted her glass. And my son will finally learn what happens to those who betray me. As thunder echoed outside, she took one long sip, savoring the taste of power. And somewhere beneath that thunder, I knew it. The widow's hunt wasn't ending. It was only shifting gears. Next time she wouldn't send her men. She'd come herself. If someone powerful destroyed your name, your home, and everything you loved, would you run? Or fight back? Tell me in the comments. You're watching the Billionaires Enclave, where betrayal has a price, and no secret stays buried. Hit that subscribe button, share this video, and don't blink, because Act 6 will expose the traitor no one saw coming. When trust is shattered, it doesn't make a sound, just leaves you bleeding from the inside out. That night, I learned that betrayal doesn't always come from the enemy. Sometimes, it's the hand you thought would pull you out of the fire that pushes you in. After the safe house burned, Adrian and I moved again. A safe spot arranged by Marisol. It was an abandoned photography studio. Half-broken windows and the scent of dust clinging to the air. We thought we'd vanished. But by dawn they had found us again. There were no trackers, no visible trails. Yet somehow Eleanor's men always knew exactly where we were. And that could only mean one thing. Someone was feeding her our every move. Marisol was pacing, voice shaking. Lena, maybe they tapped your phone. Cut her off. We left everything behind. No devices. No tech. Adrian's jaw tightened. Then it's someone inside our circle. Silence. A silence thick enough to drown in. That's when Detective Miles Carver arrived. He'd been tailing Eleanor's shell companies for months, but even he looked rattled. Eleanor Sterling's tightening the noose, he said. Your faces are on every security bulletin. Someone's tipping her off before I can act. He laid down a file, coded bank transfers, all tied to the same offshore account. The name on the signature line made my heart stop. Daniel Cross. Mentor. The one who promised to protect me after Victor's death. He wasn't just Eleanor's secret partner. He was the leak. Daniel once told me I reminded him of Victor, the way I questioned power, the way I believed justice still mattered. But now I realized what he really saw. Not potential. Leverage. He'd been feeding information to Eleanor in exchange for control of the Sterling Foundation, Victor's charity turned money laundering machine. I slammed the file shut. He played us. He played me. Adrian's hands were shaking. He's been moving funds since before my father's death. My mother couldn't have done half this without him. Miles nodded grimly. And it gets worse. He's also cut a deal with federal investigators. He'll give up Eleanor, if he can hand them you two as accomplices. The betrayal wasn't just personal. It was strategic, Marisol whispered. So he's turning everyone into pawns. I stared at the file. Then we flipped the board. That night we went hunting, not with bullets but with proof. We traced Daniel's transfers, his secret meetings, his communications with Eleanor. Every trail led back to a penthouse office on the city's east side. His consulting firm. By 2 a.m. Adrian and I broke in. No guards. Just glass walls, cold marble, and the scent of expensive betrayal. On his desk, a framed photo of him with Victor, smiling like brothers. And beside it, a sealed envelope marked for Eleanor, final draft. Adrian tore it open. Inside was a legal motion, transferring control of Sterling Global's medical patents directly to Eleanor Sterling. Victor's legacy, rewritten by two snakes. Adrian exhaled, shaking. She's taking everything. Even the name. Before I could answer, the office phone buzzed. Once. Then the voice came through. Calm, almost casual. Lena. I was wondering when you'd find me. Daniel. Froze. How long have you been watching us? He chuckled softly. Since before you stopped being a maid. You thought you rose because you were clever. But every step, every secret you found, I placed there. My blood ran cold. You used me. Of course, he said. But don't take it personally. You were just useful. I wanted to scream, to throw something. But then he said something worse. Eleanor's not your biggest threat, Lena. Because when this empire burns, I'll make sure the world blames you. The line went dead. And for the first time since Victor's death, I realized something terrifying. We weren't just fighting corruption. We were standing inside a war already lost. Miles Carver's voice broke through the static on our radio. Lena, Adrian, they're coming for you. Someone leaked your location again. Adrian grabbed the hard drives from Daniel's desk. We have what we need. Let's go. We sprinted down the emergency stairs, the sound of boots echoing above us. Eleanor's men were in the building. Halfway down I looked back, flames licking the upper floors, alarms blaring. Daniel wasn't just cleaning up his mess. He was erasing the evidence. We barely escaped before the building exploded, glass raining down like confetti of ruin. Eleanor's voice echoed in my mind. By the time I'm done, you'll wish you'd stayed a maid. Marisol was tending to my shoulder where a shard of glass had sliced through. Adrian sat beside me, silent, lost in thought. You okay? Yes. He nodded slowly. I trusted Daniel more than my own mother. That's on me. No, I said softly. It's on all of them. The rich build empires on trust, and destroy lives when that trust fights back. He looked at me, tired, broken, but with something new in his eyes. Resolve. Then we stop hiding, he said. We end this. Together. Outside the city slept. But the storm that had been brewing since Victor's death was about to break. Daniel Cross had drawn first blood, and Eleanor was preparing her final blow. Tomorrow the hunt would end. But whose empire would fall? What's worse, being betrayed by your enemy, or by the person who taught you everything you know? Tell me what you think in the comments. You're watching the Billionaires Enclave, where power has a price and loyalty always bleeds. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share if you're hooked. Act 7. The Widow's Trap will push every secret to the breaking point. You can't kill a storm by running from it. You face it or it swallows you. For days, we thought Daniel's betrayal was the final strike. But we were wrong. Eleanor Sterling was never one to delegate vengeance. No, she wanted to feel it. To see it happen piece by piece. And this time she wasn't sending men or lawyers. She was sending ghosts. The first sign came quietly. Adrian's accounts were frozen. My name, dragged through the media like mud on marble floors. Headlines read, "Former maid manipulates billionaire heir in scandalous power scheme." Evelyn Shaw, the gossip journalist who'd been silent for months, suddenly had exclusive footage. Leaked phone calls, edited documents, and a voice recording of me saying things I'd never said. "She's framing you," Marisol whispered, scrolling through the news on her phone. "Every network's running it. They're painting you as his mistress, his manipulator." I looked up. Then she's finally using her empire the way Victor warned she would. Adrian clenched his fists. My mother doesn't destroy reputations. She dismembers them. And that's when we realized the truth. Eleanor's war wasn't fought with bullets. It was fought with perception. She'd weaponized the one thing she owned completely. The Sterling name. She stood at a press podium, wearing black again, like mourning was her second skin. "My late husband's memory," she said softly, "has been tainted by those who claimed to serve him. My son has been misled by individuals who prey on grief and wealth." She paused, letting crocodile tears gather. "And I will not rest until justice is restored to the Sterling name." The audience clapped. Cameras flashed. But behind her perfect mask, I could feel the venom dripping. She wasn't defending Victor's legacy. She was rewriting it. Adrian stared at the broadcast replay, his face pale. "She's turning the world against us," he said quietly. "Every board member's calling. They're pulling out." I walked to the window. "Then we take it back. Not with the truth, but with her own weapon." He looked up. "You mean?" "Yes," I said. "We leak her secrets before she buries ours." But that's when Detective Miles Carver entered. His face grim, eyes heavy with warning. "You won't get the chance," he said. "Eleanor's already moved first." He tossed a thin folder onto the table. Inside, an arrest warrant. For me. Forgery. Fraud. Extortion. All based on doctor documents Daniel helped her plant before his disappearance. "She's boxed you in, Lena," Carver said. "Legally, financially, publicly. You're her ghost already." For the first time, I felt something I hadn't in weeks. Fear. That night, the trap closed completely. The lights in our safe house flickered once, then went out. Adrian drew his gun, whispering, "Backup generators down." I stepped forward, straining to listen. And then the unmistakable click of high heels. From the hallway, her voice cut through the dark. "You didn't think I'd let you destroy my family from the shadows, did you, dear?" Eleanor Sterling. Alive, elegant, and holding the same silver cane she carried to Victor's funeral. Her guards surrounded the door. Silent, suited, armed. I should have been terrified. But in that moment I only felt clarity. I'd seen the monster behind the makeup. I took a step forward. "You could have ended this quietly. Why come yourself?" She smiled. "Because victory tastes better when you serve it personally." Adrian stepped between us. "Mother, please. This isn't you." Her gaze softened just for a moment. "Oh, my darling boy. This has always been me. And then she turned to me. You should have stayed in your place, Miss Morales. My husband's mercy made you soft. Mine won't. Her guards lunged. We escaped through the service elevator, the same one I used to clean in my maid's uniform years ago. Now I was running for my life through it. By the time we reached the street, police sirens wailed from both ends. She hadn't just sent men. She'd sent the law. Adrian looked at me, desperate. Go. I'll buy you time. I grabbed his wrist. No. We end this together. But he pushed me into a narrow alley, eyes fierce. If she catches you, it's over. If I stall her, you still have a chance to prove everything. Before I could argue, he kissed me once. Fast, urgent, final. And then he ran toward the flashing lights. I watched him disappear into Eleanor's trap. They say love can save you. But in my world, love is the reason you burn. Eleanor's move wasn't just about control. It was about rewriting who we were. She'd cast me as the villain, Adrian as the traitor, and herself as the grieving queen. But what she didn't know was this. Every empire that hides its sins eventually chokes on them. And if Adrian was gone, I would tear down every wall she built until the truth screamed louder than her lies. In the world of the powerful, revenge isn't personal. But tonight it was about to become exactly that. If you were Lena, hunted, framed, and heartbroken, would you fight back, or disappear forever? Drop your thoughts below. You're watching the Billionaires' Enclave, where every secret has a price and every love story leaves scars. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. When you pull at a thread that's sewn through a dynasty, the whole tapestry comes with it. You learn very quickly who will tear it with you, and who will try to stitch it back together. I needed allies. Not muscle I didn't have, but leverage I could turn into momentum. People with names that mattered, inside knowledge, legal teeth, and a conscience left to bleed for the truth. So I called them. Marisol came first, not with weapons but with memory. She'd spent years working nights at the Sterling developments, knowing the men who'd been fired, the subcontractors ghosted, the ledgers that never balanced. She didn't bring a gang. She brought witnesses, broken, proud, and willing. We promised them protection, anonymity, and the chance to finally be seen. They came. Detective Miles Carver showed up next. He had the badge and the exhaustion of a man who knows the law can be a blunt instrument, unless you sharpen it. Carver had been tiptoeing around Sterling's legal maze for months. He promised warrants, quiet subpoenas, and the ability to neutralize Eleanor's attempt to hide assets under legal smoke and mirrors. Adrian arrived with a thing that could make the world tilt. Victor Sterling's encrypted ledger, the drive Victor himself had tucked away, the one Daniel Cross had tried to bury. Adrian moved like an exhausted man with a load he'd rather not carry, but he carried it anyway. It's everything, he said, voice close and hoarse. If we expose Cross International and the Cayman Trail, the board fractures. The regulators step in. She can't move without us seeing it. Evelyn Shaw, the woman who once delighted in making monsters from missteps, surprised me by doing the opposite. I thought she'd never stop selling scandal. Instead, after her own reckoning with a truth she couldn't monetize without consequences, she agreed to run the series. Not cheap gossip but a forensic excavation of money, names, and methods. Her pen would cut deeper than any missile. And then there was Dr. Samuel Pierce. He'd kept Victor's private records. For years he'd looked away. Guilt had hollowed him out. But when Carver confronted him with the ledger, he broke. He brought medical files, hospice invoices, private notations that disproved Eleanor's careful story about Victor's final months. Those notes would not only embarrass her, they would prove motive. We met in the old service wing of the Sterling estate. Ironically, the place where I'd once been invisible. Now it felt like a war room. Rain streaked the windows as Carver moved a map of shell companies across the table, connecting the dots Adrian's drive provided. Marisol read testimony out loud. Evelyn dictated the exposé's structure. Dr. Pierce added context with a trembling hand. Timing, I said. We leak the ledger to regulators and the press simultaneously. We give Carver probable cause. We make the board act before Eleanor can bury it in legal fog. The plan was surgical. Had to be. Eleanor's reach was long. She had lawyers on retainer and favors stowed away like bullets. She'd try to freeze accounts, secure injunctions, or worse, fabricate crimes. But plans meet reality fast. We moved at 2 a.m., the hour the world sleeps but institutions are awake. Adrian's drive uploaded onto a whistleblower network. Evelyn's first piece went live simultaneously. A raw, fact-heavy dossier with redacted names, bank trails, and contracts that smelled of corruption. Carver had warrants queued and local enforcement units ready. For 12 minutes, 12 heartbeat-long minutes, it worked. Then Eleanor struck. She used every tool. A flurry of emergency injunctions, a sympathetic op-ed from a columnist she'd long nurtured, and a cascade of anonymous leaks painting me as a vengeful imposter. The board's phone lines lit up with panic, and regulators were forced to pause, not on merit, but on the legal chaos she manufactured. Worse, Daniel Cross stepped out of the shadows. He hadn't vanished. He'd been waiting, choosing a moment. He walked into our meeting place like a man at home among ghosts. "You always pick the dramatic hour," he drawled, voice flat as cut glass. "You would have thought the maid had learned to vanish." I felt something colder than fear. Betrayal felt different when the betrayer had been your teacher. "You taught me how to read ledgers," I said. "Not how to serve you." He smiled. "And yet you still think you can take the throne." Daniel's warning was the least of it. Eleanor used the disruption to target our weakest link, our witnesses. Anonymous threats, small fires at apartment blocks where Marisol's sources lived, the sudden withdrawal of protection for a key witness on a witness list Carver had scrambled to assemble. The Empire stabbed at our margins. Still the ledger was out. People saw the numbers. They could feel the fissures. Stock traded down. Donors called back gifts. The press shifted from rumor to forensic questions. We had won the first round, but the victory tasted like coal. Someone in our corridor of allies had been compromised. Someone had fed Eleanor a sliver of our timing, enough to blunt the strike. Carver swore he'd find the leak. Adrian vowed to stand, but in his eyes I saw the cost of loving a family that had taught him to betray. We regrouped in the early light, bruised but determined. Evelyn's second piece was sharper. An audio clip Dr. Pierce had found where a Sterling executive reassured a Cayman banker that arrangements were in place. The clip splashed across morning feeds, and regulators restarted. Eleanor lashed back publicly. A staged, teary interview where she spoke of grief and betrayal. For millions she was still the grieving widow. For those who had seen the ledger, she was less. The country was split. The board frayed. Before the sun rose fully, Carver whispered through the phone, "We've got movement on Cross. They're unspooling." I breathed out for the first time that night. Not because we'd won, but because we'd made them sweat. Because power is brittle when everyone can see how it's glued together. We all knew this wasn't the finish line. It was the battlefield where enemies would test limits, loyalties would break, and new truths would be forced open. Daniel Cross was not finished. Eleanor would not go quietly. And the ledger, Victor's last messy human ledger, had more names than we could bear in one strike. But there's a strange courage that comes from being the one who was invisible. You are used to moving in shadows. Now, in daylight you learn to stand. We rode into the war wearing suits instead of armor, and with the fierce resolve of those who had nothing left to lose. If you were Lena, exposed but determined, would you double down on public exposure or bank on the law to finish them? Tell me which move you'd make and why. If you're following Lena's fight, subscribe to the Billionaires Enclave. We drop the next act, The Widow's Fall, soon. Like, comment your strategy, and share so more people can watch this empire unravel. They say every empire falls from the inside. But no one tells you it screams while it crumbles. Eleanor Sterling's empire was bleeding. Stock prices nosedived. Board members resigned overnight. Her charities, the ones she used as fronts for power, were being investigated, and the world that once bowed to her name now whispered it like a curse. But what terrified her most wasn't the collapse. It was me, the maid she thought she erased. The morning the press called her the Black Widow of Wall Street, I was standing on a rooftop overlooking the city, watching her empire choke on its own lies. Beside me, Adrian looked hollow, exhausted, torn between blood and truth. "She's my mother," he said quietly. "But you're right. She deserves this." I turned to him, voice low. "Adrian, this isn't revenge anymore. It's survival. If we stop now, she'll come back stronger." He nodded, eyes darkening. "Then we finish it." That's when Detective Carver called. His voice was grim. "Lena. Eleanor's disappearing assets through Cross. Oh sure. Cayman fronts. She's trying to vanish before the government freezes her accounts." My stomach twisted. "She's running." "No," Carver said. "She's retreating to strike from the shadows. To Eleanor in her mansion. Empty, echoing, cold. She sits in her private study, eyes sunken, wine glass trembling in her hand. The once unbreakable queen was cracking. Her reflection in the mirror mocked her. Older, fragile, haunted. "Look at you," she whispered to herself. "All these years building power, and you let a maid destroy it." Her mind spiraled through every betrayal, Victor's secrets, Daniel's double games, Adrian's defiance. And underneath it all, guilt, the thing she'd buried so deep it had started to rot. She pressed her hand against a photograph of Victor and herself. Her voice broke. "I did everything for us." But even she didn't believe it anymore. Meanwhile, our side wasn't celebrating, we were surviving. Daniel Cross had vanished again. Evelyn Shaw was now broadcasting daily exposés, painting Eleanor as a sociopath and me as some avenging angel. And Marisol. She worried I was becoming exactly what I'd promised not to be. "You've changed, Lena," she said one night in the safe house. "You don't sleep. You don't laugh. You're becoming her." I shook my head. "I'm becoming free." She sighed. "There's a difference." Days later, Adrian got a message. Encrypted and signed but unmistakable. It was from his mother. "Meet me where it all began." The coordinates led to Sterling Gardens, the estate Victor had built as their family sanctuary. It had been abandoned since his death. Adrian looked at me. "She wants to end this privately." I whispered. "No, Adrian. She wants to end us." He hesitated. "Then we end her first." We went together, him, me, and Carver watching from the perimeter. The air was thick with ghosts. Every marble statue, every rose bush, every echo of laughter felt haunted by what this family had lost. Interior showing, Victor's old greenhouse. Soft golden light filters through dusty glass. Eleanor stands in the center, wearing black, a vision of fallen royalty. "Hello, my darling," she said when Adrian entered. Her voice trembled, equal parts venom and love. "I didn't expect you'd bring her." I stepped forward. "I'm not here to hide." Eleanor's smile was sharp. "No, you never were." The silence between us felt like a blade. She circled me slowly, her heels clicking against marble. "You were supposed to stay invisible. Sweep floors. Clean our mess. But you..." She stopped, her voice cracking. "You stole everything." I met her eyes. "No. I just refused to stay beneath you." Her hand twitched toward a drawer. I was ready. But instead of a weapon, she pulled out a letter. Victor's handwriting. She handed it to Adrian. "You think I killed him? Read it." He unfolded it, eyes scanning every line. His face went pale. "Mom, this isn't possible." I stepped closer. "What does it say?" Eleanor's voice was low, almost tender. "He was dying, Lena. Cancer. He made me promise to protect the company from the vultures. But when he found out about you, he changed the will. Gave you shares, power, everything." She turned away, trembling. "He said you reminded him of himself, of the hunger, the fight." He betrayed me for a maid. My breath caught in my chest. So you didn't kill him? She looked at me, tears welling. No. But I wanted to. The greenhouse went silent except for the rain tapping the glass. For a moment, I almost pitied her, this woman drowning in the poison of her own pride. But then her mask slipped. And I saw it, that glint of hatred that had never died. You think you've won, she hissed. You'll never survive this world. You don't belong here. I stepped forward steady. Then I'll build a world that does. That's when the gun clicked. Adrian froze. Mom, no. Eleanor's hand shook, the barrel trembling between us. You ruined us all, she whispered. The sound that followed was deafening. A flash of light, a shattering of glass, and Eleanor collapsing in Adrian's arms. Lena's face lit by lightning, Adrian screaming her name, the gun spinning across the floor. Carver burst in seconds later. Gun down. Secure the room. Eleanor was still breathing, barely. Blood on her silk blouse. Tears streaking her face. She looked up at me and managed a faint, broken smile. Maybe you were always meant to win. And then her hand fell still. Eleanor Sterling, the woman who ruled empires, manipulated governments, and buried truths, died not with vengeance, but with regret. And in that silence, something inside me cracked too. Because for all the hate between us, I realized she wasn't my enemy anymore. She was my mirror. Police lights flashing, media frenzy outside the estate. Adrian walking beside Lena in the rain. Carver's voice echoed behind us. It's over. She's gone. I shook my head. No, it's never over. Not when power's built on blood. Adrian turned to me. His expression torn between grief and relief. What happens now? I looked out at the flashing lights. Now we find out what her empire was really hiding. Because Victor Sterling's secrets didn't die with Eleanor. They were just beginning to surface. If you were in Lena's place, would you forgive Eleanor in her final moments? Or let her fall? Tell me what your heart says in the comments. They said I'd never make it out alive. That a maid had no right standing among billionaires. That I'd crumble the second I tried to rise. But they were wrong. Because sometimes you have to lose everything before you finally learn who you are. It's been 3 months since Eleanor Sterling's fall. The media called it the end of an empire. But for me it wasn't the end. It was a beginning I never saw coming. The company's name, Sterling Global, now bore another name beside it. Morales. Sterling Morales Foundation for Renewal. Not a corporation. Not a dynasty. A rebuilding effort. One that turned what was once built on greed into something that gave back. I remember the first time I walked into the boardroom after everything had collapsed. The same marble floors I used to polish now echoed with the sound of my heels. The same men who once ignored me now stood when I entered. Power feels different when you never wanted it. Adrian sat beside me, no longer a shadow of his family, but a man standing on his own. He'd cut ties with the toxic legacy that nearly destroyed him. And though the world still whispered about us, the maid and the heir, we didn't care. Do you regret it? He asked one morning as we watched the sunrise over the city. The lies, the fight, losing her? I shook my head. No, because without all of it, I'd still be cleaning the messes other people made. He smiled faintly. And now you're cleaning up the world's. I laughed, the first real laugh in months. Someone has to. But not everyone was ready to let the past die. Detective Miles Carver came to see me one last time. He looked older, the kind of tired only truth can bring. You know, he said, sliding a folder across my desk, we never found where Daniel Cross disappeared to. Or what he took. I opened the file. Offshore accounts, encrypted messages, a shadow network that went deeper than we'd imagined. So you're saying the empire isn't dead? Carver leaned back. Empires never die, Lena. They just change hands. Before he left, he paused at the door. You did good. Just don't let the world turn you into the thing you fought against. His words stayed with me. Because the truth is, power isn't clean. And once you touch it, it never fully washes off. Marisol visited next, carrying a bag of arepas and that same contagious laugh that kept me alive during the darkest nights. She looked around the penthouse, eyes wide. "Girl, I can't believe it. You actually did it." Smiled. "We did it." She grinned. "Yeah, but you're the one with the skyline view and billionaire boyfriend." I rolled my eyes. "Don't start." But when she hugged me, it wasn't about money or victory. It was about everything we survived together. The poverty, the pain, the nights we thought we wouldn't make it. Marisol reminded me of something I'd forgotten. You can win the world and still lose yourself if you forget who helped you stand up. Evelyn Shaw, the gossip queen herself, came crawling for an exclusive interview. I declined. But she ran a headline anyway. The maid who rewrote the rules of power. And maybe she was right. Because what I learned wasn't how to rule, it was how to rebuild. Then came the night I returned to the old Sterling mansion. It was empty now. The gardens overgrown, the halls silent. But I needed to see it one last time. That house had been my cage and my battlefield. And now it was my closure. I found Eleanor's old study, the same one where she'd once humiliated me. Dust floated through the sunlight as I stood where her desk used to be. And there, on the wall, still hung a faint imprint where Victor's portrait had once been. I whispered, "You both built something that destroyed people. I'll build something that heals them." It wasn't forgiveness. It was peace. Later that week, I stood at the launch of the foundation. Cameras flashing, journalists whispering, and donors waiting. I took a deep breath and spoke from the podium. Power isn't about money. It's about what you do when you have it. For years this empire served the few. Now it will serve everyone. Because I was once invisible, and I know what that feels like. Applause filled the hall. Adrian stood in the front row, smiling proudly. For the first time I felt like I belonged, not because I'd earned their approval, but because I no longer needed it. That night, as the city lights shimmered below, I found a letter on my desk. No return address. No signature. Just one line in elegant handwriting. "The game isn't over. DC." My blood ran cold. Daniel Cross. He was still out there. Still playing. I folded the note carefully, tucked it away, and whispered to the empty room. "Then I'll be ready. Because every empire that falls leaves behind its ghosts." But this time I wasn't afraid of them. Soft instrumental swells. Camera pans across Lena's penthouse balcony as she stands in the wind. Strong, alone, unbroken. I started as a maid. But I became more than that. A survivor. Builder. A woman who turned ashes into empires. And maybe that's what it means to win it all. Do you think power can ever be used for good? Or does it always corrupt in the end? Drop your answer below and let's talk about it.
In the end, she didn't just expose a dynasty, she changed the rules of power forever. The maid they underestimated became the name they'll never forget. This was the maid who brought down a billionaire empire. You've been watching the Billionaires Enclave, where every secret has a heartbeat. If this story left you breathless, subscribe, share, and stay tuned. Because the next secret might be even darker.